A reading from St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 3, beginning to read at verse 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint, dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matter of the law, justice and mercy and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strain at a gnat but swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup, so that the outside also may become clean. As the summer holidays draw to a close, I find myself thinking about the countless children and young people who will soon be going back to school, many of them for the first time since the beginning of lockdown, and all of them into a new context, a new year group, a new school, or undertaking the transition from school to sixth form college. For many, there will be new processes and practices to learn in the endeavour to make classrooms and school buildings as COVID-safe as possible. And for all of them, different teachers to get used to, and the next step of their learning to apply themselves to. Some will be nervous and apprehensive, some will be excited and really looking forward to it. Many will feel a mixture of emotions, and some will just breeze through without seemingly much forethought at all. One of the most significant transitions will be for 11-year-olds making that move from primary education to secondary education. It's a big step, and things can feel very different. The fact that I remember how it was for me all those years ago testifies to what a significant move it is. I think if you asked Rita Ferguson from St. Mary's, whose 100th birthday is today, happy birthday, Rita, she would still have memories of her school days and how she felt about those times of change, just as she has remembered verse for verse some of the poetry she learnt at school nearly 90 years ago. One of the less happy memories I have of that first year at secondary school was the experience of being well and truly told off. You may or may not be surprised to learn that I was not one of the naughty ones. In fact, I hated being in trouble and towed the line in every way. The year group I was in, however, had many pupils who had no such qualms and were constantly in the bad books of the staff. There was one dreadful time when we were all gathered together, the whole year group, and told to await the arrival of the head teacher, a rather remote and intimidating woman in the eyes of a frightened 11-year-old. She gave us all a thorough collective scolding, and of course I took it all to heart. Ours was the worst year 7 they had ever had, we were told. All privileges were to be removed at once for an unspecified length of time, and we were all told to be thoroughly ashamed of ourselves, which I duly was, as well as being a tad aware that this was really all rather unfair, seeing as I hadn't put a foot wrong. So when I read the Gospel passage that we've heard today, I do rather wonder about those scribes and Pharisees who really didn't deserve the group condemnation that Jesus heaps upon them in this chapter and the next of Matthew's Gospel. Were they all hypocritical and devoid of mercy? Were they all greedy and self-indulgent, worthy of the very forceful criticism that he directs their way? What about the scribe earlier in Matthew's Gospel, who announced to Jesus he wanted to follow in his footsteps wherever it took him? Or the scribe Mark tells us about, who was so impressed by Jesus' teaching and so understanding of the importance of the commandment to love, that Jesus told him he was not far from the kingdom of heaven. Or Nicodemus, who first came tentatively to Jesus under cover of night, but in the end helped to tend his dead body with myrrh and aloes. So what was it that many scribes and Pharisees were doing that so incensed Jesus? Scribes were scholars and teachers of the Jewish law, and some, but by no means all, belonged to the religious group called the Pharisees, acting as their legal experts and advisors. The Pharisees saw their role as ensuring the proper keeping of the law by clarifying various aspects of it, such things as the degree of cleansing that was necessary to avoid religious impurity, or what products of the soil should be offered as tithes. Their involvement with the general population had grown as they strove to ensure the rules were being followed. Rules that Jesus could see imposed intolerable burdens on ordinary people, and was so unduly nitpicky that the real essence of the Mosaic law was being hidden, the requirements of justice, mercy and faith. As always, Jesus looks to the heart of people, what is going on in the inner self. No good to appear outwardly fine and virtuous if inside all is hollow or corrupt. This is exactly why we cannot assume that none of this is about us and all about somebody else. To some degree or other, there is always a mismatch between the face we present to the world and the person we know ourselves really to be. We want people to think well of us, and so we hide aspects of ourselves that would get in the way of that. We can be very ready to condemn others for living in such or such a way, and totally fail to see that actually we are far from practicing what we preach. And sometimes the things we do or say, or the pernickety things we fuss about, put barriers in the way of others seeking to draw near to God and looking to find God's love shining from us. A good hard look at where the inside of the cup doesn't match the cleanliness of the outside is about being honest before God, who knows us through and loves us through, and is far more ready to forgive than we often are to accept that we need it. May God bless you and keep you. Amen.